Good afternoon, and thank you so much for finding time to be with us today. The show is Diaspora Dispatches, where I get to bring you the latest news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and I trust that you had a wonderful weekend. We start our bulletin from Nigeria, and the head of the Methodist Church in Nigeria, Samuel Kanu, was kidnapped on Sunday in Abia State, southeast Nigeria, alongside two other clerics. Police in the state say a manhunt has been mounted to rescue the priest. In Nigeria, the Methodist Church is one of the established evangelical churches. Separatist groups have been active in the southeast region, where they have been agitating for a breakaway state from Nigeria. Recently, a local member of parliament was kidnapped by unknown gunmen. His headless body was found days later. A military couple was also beheaded as they traveled to the region to inform their relatives about their plans to wed. Separately, on Sunday morning, a young woman and her brother were abducted when gunmen invaded their residence in Lafia, Nasarawa State, near the capital, Abuja. Their father was shot dead during the attack. There's been a resurgence of attacks by armed gangs, including jihadist militant groups, as Nigeria prepares for a general election next year. And still staying with Nigeria, and the country has recorded 6 monkeypox cases in May from 4 states. The country's Center for Disease Control, CDC, said late on Sunday the cases were reported in the states of Bayelsa, which they reported 2, Adamawa 2 cases, Lagos 1, and Rivers State 1. In total, the country has confirmed 21 cases since the start of the year, with 1 death reported, a 40-year-old patient. The cases were reported in 9 states and the capital, Abuja. The CDC said there was a case of a visitor who exported monkeypox from Nigeria to the UK. The case was detected on the 6th of May from British authorities. Outbreaks of the virus have been found in Europe, Australia, and America. The symptoms often include fever and rash, but the infection is usually mild. And a military spokesman in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo says 2 Rwandan soldiers were captured by villagers just today after Kigali claimed they were captured by pro-government rebels. The Rwandan soldiers Elise Nkunda Bagenzi and Ntwara Gad were captured by residents of Bwishwa Chiefdom, about 20 kilometers away from the border, according to General Sylvain Ekenge. He claimed the 2 soldiers entered the DR Congo last Wednesday to attack the Runagambo military camp before they were captured by the residents. On Saturday, Rwanda said the 2 soldiers were being held captive in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo by the Rwandan Hutu FDLR militia, which it says gets support from Kinshasa. DR Congo has ramped up its offensive against the M23 rebels in North Kivu province. The rebels, who have been driven out of DR Congo in 2013, have regrouped and retaken strategic areas. Rwanda has deployed troops to its borders with DR Congo because of the clashes. And then we head over to Egypt, and a criminal court in Egypt has sentenced a former presidential candidate to 15 years in prison with hard labor. Abdel Momain Albu Futa, who is 70 and in poor health, was convicted along with an interim leader of proscribed Muslim Brotherhood group, Mahmoud Ezzat, of disseminating fake news and joining a terrorist group. Both are blanket charges. Mr. Abdul Futa was arrested in 2018 upon his return from Britain. While in London, he gave several media interviews in which he criticized President Abdul Fattah el-Sisi's rule. The defendants can appeal their sentences. And Sudan's military government has lifted a state of emergency, which it imposed after seizing power in a coup 6 months ago. The country's ruling Security and Defense Council said the decision was made at a meeting headed by military leader General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. It said the move was aimed at creating the right atmosphere for dialogue. Protests against the military government have continued since the coup in October. In recent days, security forces have arrested many protesters, targeting the leaders of the resistance movement. Clashes with police have killed nearly 100 people since then. And then we head over to South Sudan, and Sudan have announced the reopening of the Nile River transport route in coastal town of the White Nile State on Saturday. The strategic river transport resumed after 11 years of closure due to the border dispute that culminated into the brief 2012 Hague League War. Over the weekend, the inland river transport was declared open under the directives of President Kiir and the head of state of the Sudanese Sovereign Council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. The presidential advisor on national security affairs, Tut Gatloek, appealed to traders to make good of the Nile River. Meanwhile, acting governor of the White Nile State, Omar Al-Khalifa Abdullah, says the activation of water transportation will improve the trade between Sudan and South Sudan. And Macky Sall, the current chair of the African Union, has reiterated the African Union's call for the lifting of Western sanctions that have targeted Zimbabwe for more than 20 years. He was delivering a speech in Malabo on Friday during the first African Union Humanitarian Summit. The UN Special Rapporteur on the negative impact of the unilateral coercive measures on the enjoyment of human rights found earlier this year that Western sanctions had exacerbated Zimbabwe's economic and humanitarian crisis. Two African Union extraordinary summits kicked off in Malabo on Friday after Equatorial Guinea's President Teodoro Obiang addressed the opening session. The Senegalese president, serving as African Union chairperson, delivered the speech. He called for the lifting of Western sanctions that have been affecting Zimbabwe now for over 20 years. And then we head back to DR, and the decision by Congo to cut ties with Rwanda has elicited mixed reactions. Kinshasa on Friday halted Rwandan air flights from countries alleging Kigali's involvement in supporting the M23 rebel group in the eastern parts of the vast nation. Rwanda Defense Forces RDF later said 2 soldiers had been kidnapped on patrol and were being held by the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, another rebel group active in eastern DRC. And we end from where we started, back in Nigeria, and Nigeria's main opposition party on Saturday named former Vice President Atiku Abubakar as its candidate for the 2023 election to replace President Muhammadu Buhari. Abubakar, 75 years old, a Northern Muslim and a stalwart of the People's Democratic Party, or PDP, has made numerous bids to capture the presidency of Africa's most populous country. He won most ballots from PDP's party delegates who voted in a primary election in Abuja on Saturday, beating a challenge from Rivers State Governor Ezenwo Nyesom Wike. The PDP and Buhari's ruling All Progressive Congress Party, APC, were both scheduled last weekend to select candidates for the presidential race in February. But a day before its primaries were to start, the APC announced that it had pushed its party convention back a week to June 6th through June 8th. Early on Saturday, PDP delegates and political leaders packed out at Abuja National Arena, decked out in the opposition party's red, white and green colors. Buhari, who is 79 years old right now, leaves office in Nigeria still struggling to end a more than a decade-long jihadist conflict in its northeast and a wave of violent banditry and mass kidnapping in its northwest. The PDP ruled Nigeria for a decade and a half before its then-president Goodluck Jonathan was ousted by the APC alliance in 2015 to bring Buhari to power. And that is the latest news from within the continent of Africa. Thank you so much. And in case there's anything happening out there, please bring it to my attention and let the rest of our viewers know what's happening. Good luck. Good afternoon to you and Noah Biafra Chidisco. Okay, very good afternoon to you. So this story we've been talking about, of course, there's a lot happening in Nigeria. As you know, the country is preparing to its elections next year, so a lot has been happening. And even as the political temperatures continue to heighten, the issue of insecurity and abduction and others. So now is still on the rise, and the latest is the abduction of the leader, can I get the story, of Nigeria's Methodist Church. His name is Samuel Kanu, and was kidnapped on Sunday in Abia State, southeast Nigeria, and he, together with 2 other clerics, were kidnapped. And so this is a cause for concern, and police in the state say a manhunt has been mounted to rescue the priest. I don't know if they will be able to rescue that priest, going by the recent stories we've been carrying, what has been happening in Nigeria, and sometimes, you know, the killings of the police officers, for instance, and others and a local member of parliament who did not manage to come out of those kidnappings alive. So hopefully the priest will remain safe. But we know that the kidnappings have been a means of, has been another venture that is very lucrative in Nigeria, where now these criminals use kidnapping as part of, making money. So kidnapping a head of a very established church, like a Methodist church, I think perhaps that will bring more attention to what otherwise has been something that has been normalized, and that is the increase of insecurity in Nigeria. Remember, even after that attack on that train, very few people have been rescued from that and have been, given back. But there's still others who, the government or local authorities cannot account, don't even know where they are. So that is an actual problem. And I think maybe, I don't know if this will bring to the attention to the rest of the world, for the world to know what is really happening in Nigeria. But it is quite unfortunate. The kidnapping, of the head of the Methodist Church in Nigeria. That is like, I don't know if it's the Archbishop or what, but, it's the head of the Methodist Church in Nigeria, and that is a big deal. I'm not saying the kidnapping of these other, normal Nigerians is not a problem. That is much a bigger problem, because it is lives which are in danger here. And this has become something that a rhetoric that we keep hearing from the government. Every now and then when things like this happen, they just send their thoughts and prayers. Sometimes thoughts and prayers, President Buhari, is not enough. You have to put measures in place. At least you have to look like you're doing something to address the issue of insecurity in Nigeria. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. And so now the latest victim of these unnecessary kidnappings is the head of the Methodist Church in Nigeria. And we know that there has been an increase of tension. Of course, the separatists who also have been calling for a breakaway state, that will be the Biafrans. Excuse me. It's cold in the studio, bear with me. But that, and also other militia groups, there's been an increase in banditry and jihadist militancy in Nigeria. And so it is something that we have to worry about. At least the rest of us are worried, but it appears perhaps not enough in Nigeria, because these things continue to go on, and it has been normalized, and to some extent people have been desensitized from this. So you hear somebody is kidnapped, or there's a mass kidnapping, there's a murder, there's a student was murdered in campus the other time because, I don't know, she was accused of being blasphemous, and it's just normalized. I think the issue of insecurity in Nigeria is something that has to be addressed. It has to be addressed, and so I hope that the head of the Methodist Church is safe. And we don't know the intention. I've not read anywhere the intention of these kidnappers. Is it because of ransom? Is there anything else? Perhaps they weren't, addressed, or what is the main reason why they found it necessary to kidnap? And how did they even get to a point where they could kidnap the head of the Methodist Church? You already know, that those places, they're restive. The cases of insecurity is high, the southeast and the northern part of Nigeria. The cases of insecurity is high. So why would they let would anybody around the bishop or the head of this church just leave him exposed like that? He's supposed to be having some security details at least, when he's out there in public, so that they make sure that he's protected. But that is just a state of affairs. This is a head of a big church like the Methodist Church, the head of the Methodist Church in Nigeria, for crying out loud. So you can imagine if these criminals are able to abduct, are able to kidnap, are able to get this person. So can you imagine how much more the people of Nigeria are exposed as far as these kind of activities are concerned? It is a cause for worry. And another news that I forgot to read to you that has to do with Nigeria still, where a stampede on Saturday at a church charity event in southern Nigeria left about 31 people dead and 7 injured. Police told the Associated Press, a shocking development at a program that aimed to offer hope to the needy. One witness said the head included a pregnant woman and many children. The stampede at the event organized by the King's Assembly Pentecostal Church in Rivers State involved people who came to the church's annual Shop for Free charity program, according to Grace Eringe Koko, a police spokeswoman. Such events are common in Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, where more than 80 million people live in poverty, according to government statistics. The Saturday's charity program was supposed to begin at 9 a.m., but dozens arrived at as early as 5 a.m. to secure their place in line. That is according to the police spokesperson. And so they somehow the locked gate was broken open, creating a stampede. So 31 people died. This is an event that was meant to offer, free food to the people in need. And so I think it happens annually, so it's something that people knew about. So people were there as early as you can imagine. I'm told even there are people who actually slept on that place waiting for them to be the first one to be served. So before even the time, the 9 a.m., which is usually the time when this charity program was expected to begin, it was already overwhelmed. So that just goes to show you the sad state of affairs. And I know this is not a uniquely Nigerian problem. Even in Kenya here, we are dealing with a huge number of people who are in need right now, who are starving, we have a part of our country which is going through serious famine and drought, situation faced right now. So it's not just a uniquely Nigerian problem, but the fact that 31 people are dead because they went to pick food, that is sad. And this comes from the most populous country in Africa and Africa's biggest economy. Can you imagine? And according to official statistics, over 80 million Nigerians are poor and are starving and are in need. And that is because Nigeria is a big country. As I said, it is the most populous country, and so it has in excess of 200 million people in terms of its population. So, but still, this is a very sad state of affairs. I would like to know, and maybe I'll go do my research and I'll bring you the details the next time, where the index as far as the poverty was before President Buhari came to power and perhaps where the country is today. I'd like to compare, maybe even with other other administrations that were there before him, and perhaps some of the policies they put in place to try to address the issues that has to do with this. So to know that 31 people died, because over stampede, they were going to get food because they needed this food, because you can't put yourself through this, if you're really not in need. So these were people that were in need, and in the hopes of getting at least a meal for a day, they ended up losing their lives. 31 people. That is sad. That is very, very sad. And maybe some of these things, as much as it does expose the underbelly of serious issues as far as even food security in Africa is concerned, it should be a wake-up call to our leaders, not just in Nigeria, but across, the continent of Africa. Scenes like this is, I don't want to even say embarrassing, because, you are hungry. You will not be embarrassed. If you're hungry, you slept without food, and your children need food, and you're told they will be giving food someplace tomorrow, starting from this time. I mean, you put the embarrassment aside and you go get food, because that is what you need. It is a basic human need that you can't do without. So I will not even call this embarrassing, because these people needed the food. There's nothing embarrassing when you're in need. But I think it is sad. It is sad as an African to see that we do have things like this happen so many years even after a lot of our countries became independent. All of our countries are independent right now. And one of the key things that our forefathers had, one of the blueprints, one of the agendas they had when they were even forming the Organization of African Unity before it was transformed to African Union in 2002. Remember, we were celebrating the African Day on Wednesday last week, and so we were celebrating the day that the African Union was formed in 1963, if I'm not wrong. And so many years later, and one of the key things that our forefathers put as the key agendas they wanted addressed in this continent was food security, was ignorance, and that is through making sure that our people are educated, and health, making sure our people are healthy and people are fed. So that was a problem then, and that was because where Africa had been during that time, and and how colonization had really affected us. But many years later, if Kwame Nkrumah, one of the key founders of the African Union and the first president for Ghana, would wake up today, or would rise from the dead today, I think he will die again, because the same things they fought for then, when Africa didn't even have much, when Africa was still a dark continent, when Africa didn't have a lot of its population educated and knowledgeable. And so many years later, while things have changed in terms of all of that, but also things have remained the same. We are still trying to address the same issues that our forefathers saw as a problem many years ago. And it's quite unfortunate. And it has become worse, because back then, people could dig, and agriculture was a source of food security for all our countries. But now things have gotten worse. Things have gotten worse, and then you put in the issue of climate change, and then you put in the issue of diseases and pandemics like what you're dealing with right now. It has made things worse. And then you add on the issue of poor governance and poor leaders that we have in this continent. I think it's just a cocktail of disaster for this continent. That's why you see 31 people can die from a stampede, because they woke up so early to go get free food, because our governments, we're not able to feed our people. It is unfortunate. It is unfortunate, and it's pretty sad. And so, hopefully, this is not something that should not be seen recurring, in the continent. But unfortunately, that is the main situation in the ground. I know I have a couple of minutes remaining, and I wanted for us to look at this issue of not Uganda, but Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, because I believe it's really getting out of hand. Over the weekend, the Democratic Republic of Congo, severed, said it's cutting ties with Rwanda as and this has elicited a lot of reactions. And so Kinshasa on Friday said that it halted the Rwanda air flights from the country, alleging that Kigali is involved in supporting the M23 rebel group in the eastern part of the First Nation. This is not the first time. If you've been following this story, it is something that has been brewing, and I think it is brewing, and it will get out of hand. And much because Rwanda just joined the East African Community Bloc just maybe a month or so ago. And so this now will become our headache because we're part of that bloc. But also, this will not just become a headache for the EAC. This will become a headache for other countries in Africa. Remember, the price tag of these conflicts we see in this continent is high, whether you like it or not. As long as one country is in turmoil and is in conflict, you will carry the burden of that war. There will be an influx of refugees from that country who are trying to seek for safe havens from across the continent and even outside. So we can't just sit and think this is not our problem, because whether we like it or not, we will be involved, so we will be affected in one way or the other. Okay? So Kinshasa has regularly accused Rwanda, of course, of carrying out incursions into its territory and of backing the armed group, the M23. More than 120 armed groups roam volatile, like 120 militant groups are in the eastern DRC, many of which are legacy of regional wars more than 2 decades ago. Just a bit of a background of what we see play out right now. And of course, relations had begun to become bad after the DRC President Felix Tshisekedi took office in 2019, but the recent resurgence of M23 violence has reignited tensions. So there was a bit of some normalization of relationship between DRC and Rwanda when, Tshisekedi became the president when he took over from Kabila, but with the resurgence of the M23, militant group, this has reignited fresh tensions, just building on what has been in existence before. Now, the militia group briefly captured North Kivu's provincial capital, Goma, in the late 2012, but the recent resurgence of M23 violence, before the army called the rebellion the following year, and Congo summoned the ambassador over alleged support of M23. Congo did that last week, and the ambassador unsuspended Rwandan flights, as I told you on Friday, to Congo in response to what it says is Kigali's support of these rebels and for carrying out a military offensive in eastern Congo. Rwanda denies supporting the rebels, who advanced close to 20 kilometers this last week to eastern Congo's main city of Goma and briefly captured the army's largest base in the area. So, Rwanda is being accused, and these are not very small accusations here. This is something that could trigger a military war in this region. And so this is something, the red flags should already be out, and EAC should already be summoning and calling for a meeting, the leadership of the East African community to address this matter. The African Union, peace and conflict, is it peace and I'm forgetting that other part, but it should be calling for a meeting right now to try and solve this problem before it gets out of hand. It has been something that has been brewing, and if it's not addressed, it might be a start of a full-blown war, and not just for the rebels in that part of the eastern part of the DRC, but also between these two countries, Rwanda and DRC. And we already seen how the beef between Rwanda and Uganda did to this region as far as even transport and human movement is concerned. Remember, Rwanda closed its borders and Uganda for nearly 2 years. Sorry, slightly over 2 years. And it really affected the flow of things here. So there has been some sort of Cold War ongoing in that enclave, and this is something that has to be addressed. And Congo's government spokesperson Patrick Muyaya announced the suspension of flights by Rwanda's national carrier and the summoning of the ambassador late Friday night following a meeting of the National Defense Council. He also said Congolese authorities had designated the M23 a terrorist group and would exclude it on and off negotiations. The negotiations that were being held in Kenya, M23 was not part of the militant group that was allowed to come because, as I told you, there are like 120 militant groups operating and fighting and involved in that conflict in the DRC. And there are others who are called to the table to try to air their grievances and have a sit down and see what is it that they are grieving about and how can the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo, hear and solve and respond to some of these issues so that, that simmering tension and that ongoing, conflict can be solved. But M23 was not, allowed to come to the table, was not invited. As far as the DRC is concerned, it remains banned. It is... it's a terrorist group, and so they're not negotiating with terrorists. That's what the government in the DRC has said, and so they have continued with their offensive, and the Rwandan government is. The DRC is accusing the Rwandan government of supporting and aiding and equipping and, supporting this, group. And, of course, the mediation between the DRC and these groups, this militant group, I don't know, the activities are all similar. Because when you're just killing people and, you're just massacring people, you're a terrorist group. I don't know how else to call it, but apparently maybe they're a bit moderate compared to M23. But they were allowed to come to the table to negotiate. And of course, the negotiations are happening here in Kenya, and Kenya, I think, is mediating through this process. So good. Now, this is what the government spokesperson in DRC is saying. A warning was made to the Rwandans whose attitude is likely to disrupt the peace process that is nearing its end with the discussions in Nairobi, where all armed groups except for the M23 are committed to the path to peace. That is what Mr. Muyaya said, and Mr. Muyaya is Congo's government spokesperson. And Rwanda's government was not immediately available for comment on Saturday. Now, the fighting over the past week has forced more than 72,000 60,000 people from their homes, the United Nations said on Friday, compounding Africa's worst displacement, crisis. And of course, Eastern Congo has experienced a near constant conflict since 1996, when Rwanda and other neighboring states invaded in pursuit of Hutu militiamen who had participated in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. And so it is the residue of this militia who went and hid in the DRC that formed the M23 rebels. Okay, the M23. Now, how now they turned out to be the people that are being that DRC is accusing of being supported by the Rwandan government is what is really interesting. So they were formed after that. Those who ran away to hide after the Rwandan genocide in 1994, and they survived, they were not captured, so they formed this M23, the Hutu militiamen. They formed this M23 rebel group, and so so that's where they have been operating. So for a long time, they were attacking Rwanda from the DRC, and now the tables has turned. Apparently, Rwanda is aiding and equipping and supporting them to attack DRC. For what reason, I'm not sure, but I'll look into it and I'll bring you the details. So that is just about what is happening. So DRC has, has banned, Rwandan air from going into the DRC, has halted. That happened on Friday. So this is a crisis. This is a crisis, and the African Union should get to this matter very, very quickly so that they can get a solution before. We already have enough things happening. Like the DRC is already in turmoil. We don't want it having another problem with Rwanda. Like it already has enough to deal with. Can you imagine 120 militia groups? Terrorist groups, well, they're called militia groups, and M23 has been designated as a terrorist group. But the activities are all the same, If you're killing people for fun, and you're slaughtering, and you're beheading, and you're raping women and children, I mean, I don't know how nice, a name. They're all terrorist groups, but maybe they're moderate. And so the government of DRC is willing to have a sit down and just listen to them and see how perhaps they can be, they can be absorbed in the government, maybe, or maybe if at all some of the issues they're raising are legitimate and how the government can address them. And so can you imagine, as a government, you have that many number of militia groups you're having to deal with, and then you also have to deal with another country that is being accused of aiding one of the most notorious of those groups in attacking you. So Rwanda seems to find itself in a very interesting positions because, like I said, it's a war with I don't want to say beef because it's not a small matter, but it's problem with Uganda has not been solved. Of course, we've seen General Muhoozi, the son of President Museveni, having mediated the latest efforts, and now things seems to be coming back to normal. But it's not really back to normal totally. So there's still some problem there. So Rwanda has to deal with issues with Uganda. Rwanda has to deal with issues with Burundi, its immediate neighbor there, and so it's now the DRC. And I think they surround it, if I'm not wrong, if you look at where Rwanda is and Burundi and the DRC, and it's surrounded, so it finds itself in a very precarious situation. So what is really going on there in Rwanda, and why is it that it's involved in some of these situations and conflicts around especially the East African community? But as I said, and I'm repeating, EAC should get on this matter very fast, because I mean we are already here with South Sudan. There's some tensions already in Darfur, and more people are, in Sudan, as much as Sudan is not part of EAC, but we get affected because we're close, especially for us Kenyans. And so, I mean, I will not even get into Somalia. So we already have enough from the Horn of Africa. We already have enough to handle and to deal with and to address. So we do not want any more conflicts. And if this can be stopped, it will be better, especially for the greater good of the East African community. Because you know what? As I said in the start, the tug of war is very big. Yeah, the prize is up there, and all of us get to share the burden of these conflicts in the continent of Africa. Yes, we do. Yes, because when they're fighting there, the people will move. When Nkurunziza decided to have a constitutional coup in 2015 and extend his mandate with an extra illegal 5 years, there was an attempted coup, remember? And a lot of Burundians are still, some came to Kenya, some went to Uganda, and a lot of them went to Tanzania. Okay, and last year, there were, I think, not last year, before the former president died in Tanzania, Magufuli, he was forcing these Burundians to go back. But because of what they had gone through and the trauma they're still suffering from, they were refusing to go back to their country. So you see, the price tag is high, because we have to accommodate these people at the end of the day and provide for them safe havens. And Kenya here, we are still dealing with a huge number of refugee influx from Somalia and from South Sudan and from other parts of Africa. And I believe the rest of African countries are. So if we can stop any more of that and make sure that some of these issues are addressed and in good time, then maybe, perhaps maybe, we shall be able to see better days for Africa. Otherwise, I don't know how some of this will pan out. Anyway, I think some of these stories are developing, and I will come back with maybe some updates tomorrow. And of course, the African Union over the weekend called on the Western countries to lift the sanctions against Zimbabwe that have been biting that country and its economy and its people for over 20 years now. So they're saying it's about time to lift these sanctions. But instead, I'm sure they'll find some other people to usually that's what happens. There's a time Zimbabweans had protest, against these sanctions, and what happened is the next day those sanctions were renewed, and more key individuals from the government were more sanctions are imposed on them. So usually it gets the negative feedback, I think. I don't know, but hopefully one day some of these things will be solved. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Ogoto. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye for now.